Hey there, so we'll continue with the review for chapter 1. So here we're going to perform the operations and simplify, right, in the form a plus bi. So this is imaginary, a complex number. So one of the first things is anytime you see a negative inside a radical, we want to take the I out of there. So when you have the square root of -1, that is I, right? So when I see the square root of -2, that really means the square root of -1 times the square root of 2, and this is equal to I. So then that means I can write this as the square root of 2 minus I root 2 times the square root of 32 plus I root 2. And now we can multiply it out. I'm a big fan of the box method, and I think I discussed that in previous videos. So I'm going to say put one of them here, so the square root of 2 minus the negative I root 2. Right, that first one here, it doesn't really matter where you put them, and then the square root of 32, and then positive I root 2 over here. And so let's multiply. So the square root of 2 times the square root of 32, right, same radical, so we can multiply the insides. So this will be the square root of 64. The square root of 2 times I, the square root of 2, so this will be, we keep the I, and the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 becomes the square root of 4. You can simplify as you go if you like. And so here minus I root 2 times the square root of 32. So we keep the minus I on the outside, and then the square root of 2 times the square root of 32 is again the square root of 64, which is 8. And then here negative I root 2 times I root 2. So now we're going to get negative I squared, right? I times I, and the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. So some things to note here, the square root of 64 is 8, and the square root of 4 is 2. So when we write this out, after this is multiplied, so I'm going to have the square root of 64, which is 8, and then we're going to have, what do we have, plus I times the square root of 4, so plus 2I, and then minus I times the square root of 64, so minus 8I. Once you're taking the square root of and it becomes a whole number, then we can write that number on the front. And the reason that we write the I before the radical is because if, right, so this is I root 2. If I say root 2I, you might think that the I is under the radical. So we want to differentiate that the I is not part of the inside of the radical. So that's why when there's a radical, we put the I out front. So where was it? So 8 plus 2I minus 8I, and then this becomes, so this is minus I squared, and then the square root of 4 is 2. So it's 2I squared. But here we have to recall that I squared, what is I squared equal to? I squared is equal to -1. Right, and that's because I is really the square root of -1. So this is really the square root of -1 squared, which gives you -1. So we can replace the I squared with -1. So this is going to become 8 minus 6I, combine like terms. These are like terms because they both have the I. So positive 2 minus 8 becomes minus 6, and then -2 times -1. So this is 8 minus 6I plus 2. And so that becomes, what is that? 10 minus 6I. So that will be our final answer. And is it in the form that we were asked to put it in? We were asked to put in a plus bi. Yes, the real part is first, right? In the complex number, this is the real part, and bi is the imaginary part. So that is okay. We have the real part is 10, and the imaginary part is minus 6i. All right, so this one was a shorter video. Our next video is word problems. So I've been asked to give more examples of word problems, or people were asking about this from the review. So what we're going to do in the next video, I'm going to work on this problem.